Hey everybody, what's going on? It is Dean Meadows. Welcome to another episode of Dean's Dialogue. So before we get into the topic today about the Gospel of John, as many of you probably know, some of you have actually messaged me about this. You're saying, hey, what's going on with the Apologia Institute on the Facebook page? Big news to announce. For the last 2 years, everything that we've rolled out, every piece of content that we've had, everything that we've produced has had Apologia Institute on it. However, as a leadership team, we've noticed that there are a bunch of organizations that use that word Apologia in it. There's Apologia Radio. There's Apologia Homeschool Resources. There's another Apologia Institute. Number one, that's a reason for what's going on. And number two, we've also noticed that it seems like nobody can say our name. I can remember speaking here recently at a congregation and the gentleman introducing me in front of a decently large crowd asked me, hey, you're the co-founder of what's that name again? And so we have decided on the basis of those two reasons, in an effort to simplify but also be more recognizable, to do away with the name Apologia Institute, and we are now we're going to be called the Daily Apologist. So what does that mean for you? What does that mean for us? I mean, for you guys, you still get the same great cutting edge content that's edifying and culturally relevant. And some, right? We're still going to be on Twitter, still going to be on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all those social media platforms, still going to blog on the website. It just means now that on Twitter, our Twitter handle is at daily_apologist. Instagram, it's just one word, the Daily Apologist. And now we have a YouTube channel by the name of the Daily Apologist as well. This also means that we have a new website, www.thedailyapologist.com. And that also means that for at least a couple of weeks, you're going to see some overlap between the content on Apologia Institute, that webpage, and also the Daily Apologist webpage. There'll be some placeholders there as far as videos are concerned. We plan on taking care of that video issue very soon, and we hope that by the middle of August, all of those placeholders are gone. Everything is nice and neat and tightly packaged for your consumption, and definitely have everything as far as kid apologists, which will be a section of the website that will be tailored just for those. Elementary, middle school kids, teen apologists for the high school kids, and then a what I think is really cool, the apologetics report, which will be an aggregate, apologetics resource, which means, hey, if one of the prominent atheists says something, or if there's some new research into intelligent design, young Earth creation, evolution, or anything like that, that'll be posted, maybe with a quick reaction from somebody on staff. Hey, there's a conference that's going on here in this area. There's a conference going on here in that area. That'll be posted. And that's simply so that you guys can know the latest and greatest of what's going on in the apologetics world. And it can be a resource for preachers, teachers, elders, parents, and even apologists as well. That's something that we want to use also as a resource for the church. So, hey, on our end, we're expanding and tailoring our content for specific groups of people that are in the church. And this is all to help us meet our mission to equip Christians to engage culture so that we can expand the kingdom. So we hope that you join us on this transition. One of the easiest ways to do that is start to follow us on our social media platforms. Go ahead and make the transition over to our new Facebook page. And once again, we wouldn't be able to do this, and we wouldn't be where we are without all of you, without your support, without your love, without your prayers. We are excited for this new chapter, in our organization's history, and we hope that you guys continue to be along for the ride. So now that we've got the big news out of the way, this exciting news out of the way, let's go ahead and get to today's topic about the dating of John. And so, just as a little bit of review for maybe this is your first time listening or watching on the YouTube channel, what we've been doing so far is we've been looking at the Synoptic Gospels and the Gospel of John with regards to authorship and dating. And we noted last episode the evidence for John, the Apostle John, that was with Jesus, that was kind of in the inner circle of Jesus, of him being the author of the book, of the letter. And today we're going to look at the dating of the Gospel of John. And this is important because John is often considered to be the last gospel written. And sometimes what people will do, and what New Testament scholars will do, and what some skeptics will do, they'll say, well, because John is the last one written, that means that the dating of it has to be old. And so the question is that true? Do we have good evidence to believe that the gospel was written inside the first century? I believe that John was the last gospel written, and I also believe that it's written within the first century. And so one of the things that we want to kind of deconstruct, or try and deconstruct in the time that we have together, is that just because John was written last doesn't mean that he was late. That just because John was written last doesn't mean that he was late. So to kind of review last episode, give you the cliff notes, we noted that, hey, the first century Bishop Clement of Rome testified that John was the author of the Gospel John, right? And that he was written after the other that it was written after the other three. Irenaeus also does this. He's a second century church father. Even later church fathers like Origen and Eusebius and Jerome, they state the same, that John was the Gospel of John was the last gospel written, and that John the Apostle was the writer of that gospel. So let's go ahead and look at the internal evidence for it. So John appears, like we've said, from some of the writers or the early church fathers, seems to be the last one that's written. But he also writes like, hey, this is inside the first century. So for instance, in John 5:2, John writes, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate in Aramaic that is called Bethesda, a pool which has 5 porches or 5 porticos. Now, what's interesting here is that John uses the present tense word in Greek is, and that describes the pool as if it were still in existence. Now, if John were writing, or if somebody else were writing in the 2nd century, they would never use the present tense. And this is why they wouldn't, because this pool was destroyed by the Romans in AD 70. So this begs the question: if John or anybody else was writing this gospel after the 1st century, why mention the pool which was destroyed as if it were still around? That would be like me documenting history, a couple of even a year or so after 9/11, and saying, in which the new tower hadn't been built, but documenting it as if they were still around. That just wouldn't make sense. So therefore, it seems that on the basis of this, at least first initial piece of internal evidence, that John's writing within the 1st century. Also, it seems that John is familiar with the death of Peter. In John 21:18, Jesus lays out how Peter is going to die, and John makes a commentary on this, noting that this he said to show by what kind of death he was going to glorify God. And remember, one of the things that we talked about when we looked at the Synoptics is they are really good about commentating on past events that have been fulfilled. And so this seems to be what John is doing here, that, hey, Jesus said this, hey, this is what's going to take place, A, B, C, and D. And then John says, hey, he said this to show what kind of death that Peter was going to have. And Peter, according to church history, is martyred in AD 64. So it seems that John, in making this commentary, is knowledgeable about the fact that Peter has died, which means that the gospel is at least written after 64 AD. Now, according to the Monarchian prologue in AD 200, John was written after his exile and after he completed Revelation. So if this is true, this could push the date to John later than AD 70, but between 81 and 96 AD. Now, this might seem like a problem, but we also have some other external evidences, like the ecclesiastical history. Notice that John lived well into his old age, so we don't have to worry about John dying. We've got history that says that, man, this guy was old when he wrote this as well. Some other evidence that we have, external evidence, we have papyrus evidence, which suggests that John was early. Most notably is the famous John Rylands fragment, which dates to about AD 125 and is really small and has tiny portions of John's gospel on it. And this specific fragment originated in Egypt. And so what does that mean, and why is that significant? This is significant because it means that the original had to be constructed well before the Christians in Egypt got their copy, which would definitely push back the original writing inside the first century. So while, once again, hey, anything is possible, it's only evidentially reasonable that John's gospel was written between the death of Peter, but possibly after Revelation. So in my estimation, it means that the Gospel of John is written between AD 64 and AD 81. Either way that you look at it, and I would even press maybe my personal opinion, most likely inside AD 70 based on internal evidence. So either way, no matter how you look at this, John's Gospel was probably the last Gospel written, but that doesn't mean that it was late. It is well within, because of John's old age, it is well within the scope of his lifespan. And so it doesn't mean that somebody else wrote it. So I think that we have good internal evidence and external evidence for the Gospel of John being written by the Apostle John, who is in the 12 of Jesus' disciples, but was also even within that inner circle of Jesus as well. So that's your evidence for John's Gospel, and John being not only the author of the Gospel of John, but also that the dating of the Gospel of John is within the first century. Thanks again for tuning in, and on behalf of the Daily Apologist, that sounds so cool to say that. Thank you once again for your support, your love, and your prayers. And hey, remember to visit the site www.thedailyapologist.com. Remember to subscribe to the newsletter. Follow us on social media. Have a great day, and remember, equip yourself to engage culture. Thank you. God bless. This is Dean Meadows signing off. Adios.